This episode is brought to you by Accenture. When your advertising operations fall out of sync, everything else follows. Spotify and Accenture are working together to reinvent the rhythm of ad sales, using automation, analytics, and smarter workflows to simplify campaign delivery and access better data across the business. The result? Less time spent on operations, more time connecting brands with the moments and fandoms that matter most. Learn more at accenture.com/Spotify.
Hey, it's Bill from the Bill Simmons podcast. FIFA World Cup 26 fans, listen up. As the official beer sponsor of the FIFA World Cup 26, Michelob Ultra is giving away $1 million worth of FIFA World Cup 26 tickets and prizes. Enter now at MichelobUltra.com/superior access/FIFA World Cup 26. Michelob Ultra FIFA World Cup 26 superior access. No purchase necessary. Open U.S. residents 21 plus begins on December 1st, 2025. Ends on July 31st, 2026. Multiple entry periods. Visit www.MichelobUltra.com/superior access/FIFA World Cup 26 for free entry deadlines, prizes, and details.
When you need to build up your team to handle the growing chaos at work, use Indeed Sponsored Jobs. It gives your job post the boost it needs to be seen and helps reach people with the right skills, certifications, and more. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need a hiring hero? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs.
Hi, gentlemen. This is Andrew Staton for Womar TV. I am so honoured. I'm not kidding you. I'm so honoured to be talking to both of you, James Faulkner and Ian Knight. James, I could talk to you for days. You've done exceedingly amount of fantastic stuff. Ian, your knowledge precedes you.
Thank you.
And I'm in awe of anybody who actually investigates into this stuff. This wonderful historical stuff. So if I may, I'm going to come back to you in a minute, Ian.
Yep.
I just want to throw something at James straight away. James, before we go into too much, you were a producer or a co-producer on this. Can you tell us how you got into it and how difficult it was to get this off the ground as a historical war movie, in Africa?
I'll try and be succinct. In 1976, a man called Barry St. Clair arrived at my house in Hampstead. I was just pursuing the life of a simple actor, and I was appearing in a series called I, Claudius, in which I was giving my Herod. Barry announced that he was forming a new motion picture production company called Samarkand, and he wanted me to run the London office. And I said to him, what do I know of production? Why ask me? He said, well, given the hard time that you gave us in Rhodesia during the Civil War, where I was shooting a film called Death in the Sun, he said, I reckon you'll learn fast. Shortly thereafter, I went off to South Africa to star in a tour of the Deep Blue Sea. I was asked to do this by Peter Tureen, the leading impresario in South Africa. Still is, I believe. And the reason for me wanting to do it was that I was to open a brand new theatre in Hillbrow, Johannesburg, the first purpose-built multiracial theatre. Not that the African population could afford the tickets, as I subsequently discovered. While I was in rehearsal, we got the money to make a small film, our first feature film called One Take Two. And it was about the making of a documentary and the difference between what happened on the ground and what the editor then saw from the rushes sent back to him. In that film, I played the political advisor to the terrorist group, a gentleman by the name of Ramon Funes, who was a Cuban guerrilla, and he was killing the people with the big guns. I affected a beret and a light perm. I would put the cast into their cars at 7 o'clock at the Landrost Hotel, drive out to the location, shoot all day long in the same filthy fatigues, drive back to Johannesburg, go to the shower, and go on stage 35 minutes later as the lead in the Deep Blue Sea. While doing that, we got the money to do Zulu Dawn. Well, actually, initially, we got a free option from Cy Enfield. Now, you will appreciate that 4 young producers with no track record as film producers required a subject matter that would announce their presence to the world. the Zulu had a track record in terms of world box office receipts. We did not. So Zulu Dawn was the ideal subject in which to have, shall we say, larger availability of funding and distribution. So we have a free option. I returned to London, having done the play. I read the screenplay and immediately thought of Peter O'Toole to play the lead as William Thesiger, Lord Chelmsford, because he bore a striking resemblance to the historical character. I sent the script to his manager, Jules Buck, that night. At 8 o'clock the following morning, there was a ring upon my doorbell. I was in bed. I raised myself, went to the first floor drawing room. There's a balcony overlooking the front garden in a Turnbull and Asser cut moquette dressing gown in cream and yellow. To my surprise, there was a very tall man standing in my front garden, holding a script. I've read it! It's brilliant! I'm doing it! It was Mr. O'Toole. I let him in. I took him upstairs to my study. I had in the corner of the study a very large telex machine. Made me look like a professional. I was 28, 29 years old, but I had a telex machine. So I was a serious individual. I did my first deal. I got him to sign a letter of intent at an agreed figure and more to come from receipts. I took the letter to my partners, who took it to the financiers, Lamitas, and it raised us $14.5 million.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. So, Ian, let's just move a little bit over to you. So I sort of bounce questions between you. Ian, the film is well known for being quite accurate in certain aspects. Can you tell us how you feel about it? And presumably you've seen the original script. So how do you feel that these people who were looking at this, how come it interpreted the actual real scenario?
Unfortunately, I'm not going to have any exciting anecdotes about tall actors coming to my door in this context, but it's surprising. In fact, I saw it when it initially came out. There were problems getting hold of Zulu Dawn for quite a long time afterwards because it had a slightly checkered distribution history. But it's been interesting coming back to it. I mean, there have been versions that you can access quite well, but it's been interesting coming back and looking at it again, seeing it on the big screen with the cinema screenings recently, and I'm almost feeling I'm coming to it afresh again. And funnily enough, one of the things that struck me actually is that anybody went to so much trouble to try and tell the story in such a broadly historical way, particularly in 1979, when, we're looking at the way, say, the American West is being portrayed. You're only just starting to get to grips with it as a historical subject rather than just a sort of mythic thing. And actually, Zulu Dawn, looking at it now, you think, wow, they've actually followed in broad sweeps, at least. I mean, there's a lot of shorthand in the way that the story is told, but it's got the gist of the British invasion. It's got the run up to it, the crossing of the river, that fantastic scene when they go across with flags flying, and the dramatic music and all the rest of it. Unfortunately, the real thing, wasn't quite like that. But I mean, it looks fantastic in the film. They go to Isandlwana. Lord Chelmsford splits his forces. The Zulus come and attack the camp behind him. All of that is accurate. And you think now,
Remind me the name of the composer.
Was it John Barry?
No.
It's
Was it Elmer Bernstein or something like that?
It was Elmer Bernstein.
It was Elmer Bernstein. Yeah, you're right.
The man who had written the score for The Magnificent Seven.
Yeah. And it's hugely, again, watching it on the big screen again now, it's hugely stirring, all of that. The visuals, the music. And I'm looking at it thinking, oh, yeah, they've got the 24th uniforms are right, and the African auxiliaries and the native contingent are right, and all that kind of stuff. And you think, wow, somebody went to an awful lot of trouble, actually. And there are things now that you look at it and you think, I wouldn't have done that quite like that. And I'm not quite sure those powder blue uniforms that the officers of the African auxiliaries are wearing are a little bit sort of 1970s.
The Sakali horse. They're accurate. We had the services of John Moller, who subsequently won an Oscar for Star Wars, and his research was exemplary.
Yeah.
I had wanted to make, I took some ridicule for it, at the time, the first bully beef Western. Hence the choice of Elmer Bernstein.
Okay, yeah. I can see that. I mean, it does have a Western quality about the whole thing. But yeah, as I say, I mean, it captures the way that, what was the British Army in Zululand actually like? Well, it was that composite group of infantry and artillery and auxiliaries, the Sakali horse, all that kind of stuff. And you think, I look back on it now and think, I'm just amazed that anybody thought that it was necessary to do all that in 1979, when you could have just told the story in a more Wild West way, really.
So I take that straight back to James. So with that information, and you got Peter O'Toole, who comes from my town. I'm not so sure, but he comes from Leeds, I think. And you are talking to a Leeds young man at the moment. You are talking to me in Leeds, from where Peter was born. And I also knew his friend Kenneth Griffiths, which was an amazing.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
So James, just for you just didn't just get Peter O'Toole. You brought in an exemplary, a wonderful cast. I'm still not so sure about Burt Lancaster. I love Burt Lancaster. There is an actual, I'm sure you know his movements and his way he portrays himself, but why did we bring Burt Lancaster in? Was there an American thing? They said we need to have an American in there, or
exactly that. It wasn't my choice. He wasn't my choice. As much as I admire Burt Lancaster and the films that he's done, he was not my choice. My first choice was Richard Harris, an Irishman, to play an Irish character.
Yes.
And the wildness of Harris, I think, would have been rather wonderful as Dernford. I couldn't get Richard Harris. I wanted Robert Shaw.
Yes. Perfect.
But that's me. I'm an actor. I know actors. I'm a purist. I know who can do it and who can't do it. And I know who's right, and I know who will have to... Sometimes somebody making a stretch if they're cast against type. I mean, not that Burt Lancaster was not cast against type. I may not have cast the actress opposite him as Fanny Colenso, given the fact that she's 5'2" and he's 6'3". But Burt, I thought, made a really good stab at playing an Irishman on the field. And he's such a professional that he was fully prepared, had the accent down, fully understood what it meant to have lost the use of one arm as Dernford. Dernford, an important and wild character, of course, proved irresistible to Fanny Colenso, the daughter of the Archbishop of KwaZulu-Natal. And the fourth script written by Cy Enfield after Zulu Dawn, Zulu Night, was entitled Fanny Colenso. And it tells the story of Fanny, who dressed as a redcoat in order to follow her hero, her love, Colonel Dernford, into Zululand.
Wow. Astounding. While you were on the set and you were you had a nice part in the film.
I was on uniform. On the set, and therefore always visible to the rest of the cast and crew, even when we ran out of money. And cast members were getting me round the throat at breakfast time and demanding to know where their next payment was.
Yeah.
I could not avoid my responsibilities. My fellow producers took to the hills, shall we say.
Running away from the Zulus, I presume.
Anyway, there is a cartoon, actually, of I think it's me. It was published in the Rand Daily Mail of a person at a telephone having been pinned to the office wall by an assegai screaming down the phone, "Zulus, pay the fucking Zulus."
Just two questions and moving into the film and then coming back to Ian again. The situation is that the cast is sometimes when you put a cast together, and you've said about Burt Lancaster, did they gel together well to deliver what you required?
Oh, very much so. Listen, for most people, I had chosen really the casting was really largely down to me, except in the case of Burt. Most people understood the adventure they were engaged on.
Yeah,
and good, talented English actors do not find it difficult to gel and to be part of an ensemble.
No, but I just
Bert
wondered.
and Peter had their difficulties because Peter's idea of keeping rather differed to Bert's, who was never late.
Yeah.
And was the ultimate professional.
Yeah. Also, just moving into a situation because you were there on the set, and before I go over to Ian, of course, with us was talking about combat and stuff like that. We've got a lot of militia and guns firing at the Zulus, and those Zulus have got the shields and the spears. Who did the stunt coordination and to get those big fights and stuff like that? How did that coordinate? Who helped you with that?
Well, we had an awful lot of stunt arrangers, and we had the best horse wrangler in the business as part of the team. You know, the moment there is a horse in a picture, it becomes a horse picture.
Right.
And with a period film, you find yourself spending up to 1/3 of your budget before you even turn a camera.
Well, bloody hell!
But we use that time to employ 110, I think it was, young men, and buy 120 animals to form a cavalry unit from scratch. There were no film-trained horses available to us. We had to do all of that and take a separate farm and have a separate training go on. You know, the armourers did a magnificent job supplying the Martini Henry carbines, etc., etc. Actually, the carbine was issued to the Sakai because they were shorter and easier to handle on horseback. But you know, all the blanks were made to give off white smoke, which was correct for the Martini Henry at the time. I think we went into every single detail that it was possible to explore, and also through the good offices of John Mollo when it came to the uniforms, the way that the infantry, the BEF, the British Expeditionary Force, would have entered Zululand, in what order they were drawn up. There is a scene when to cross the river, there was one line in the script. It read, "The army crosses the river." That was a 10-day shoot.
Oh, my God.
One line.
My goodness me. No, what I was getting to is that...
the only difference for us was that, and we did it, we crossed the river at the point at which the BEF had entered. We found the stanchions in the river where they had pulled the pontoons across at the time.
Right. Wow. No, what I was trying to say is it must be the pivotal part of the film where the battle commences. So once, you know, the army and the Zulus clashed, I wondered, you know, what the energy was like and the coordination of the stuntmen and yourselves to get that footage onto film.
Well, as you will appreciate, this is analog. This is pre-CGI. You have to have bodies. In Zulu, they had achieved the effect by having each Zulu warrior hold a pole with 3 cutouts either side of them. So if you look at it at the end, they arrive all together. We had bodies, and the only way to control movement within the battle was to have a number of assistant directors blacked up with walkie-talkies taped to the back of their shields so we could direct them remotely in that fashion.
Fantastic. Now that's the kind of thing, that's the sort of stuff I'm looking at.
Yeah.
Ian, when you see the movie, you're looking at something that's very, very visual, and it's telling a story. Who do you feel gets... I mean, I love it, and I am of an age, but how do you feel as though it comes across as a piece of, you know, historical evidence? And you can see the wonderful amount of energy that James has put in there with his cast and crew. What do you feel that people today are getting out of that?
Yeah, I think in a way, I mean, it's interesting, James, talking about the fact that, you know, those were all real people there, that you didn't have the cardboard cutouts in the distance. And I'm thinking it must have been one of the last great kind of epics in the age before CGI and all the rest of it, where everybody that you see on screen is actually there on screen. They are. It's absolutely full of sort of seething figures and warriors and all the rest of it. And I think, you know, I think anybody coming to it now who doesn't have an interest in the history would be surprised, maybe shocked, maybe even appalled by the reality of the British invasion of Zululand, and the extent of the disaster there. And I think what it does has always done for me is really capture that kind of the epic sweep of the battle. There's 2 or 3 shots that I still remain, having seen it many, many times now, very fond of. There's a couple of shots looking down from the hillside into the British camp as the Zulus come storming in. And I think James and Christopher Casanova's Lieutenant Coghill are riding out of the picture. You can just see them sort of exiting right with the colours. And I look at that and think, yeah, that actually has a flavour of the real thing. That's when the whole thing suddenly collapsed and went to hell and gone for the British, and the Zulus come storming in. There's really a hair on the back of the neck moment in the movie that captures that very well. And I think it's the broad epic sweep of the story that it does so well. There's no attempt to try and represent big events with a small number of figures and close-up camera shots and all that kind of thing. It's all right there on screen.
It was not the BBC version.
No, it was not the BBC version, absolutely. And in fact, you mentioned Kenneth Griffith earlier.
Yeah.
Kenneth Griffith put out a documentary about the Anglo-Zulu War for the centenary.
Yes.
Black as hell, thick as grass, I think it is.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Yeah. And he used scenes from the movie to illustrate it. And I remember seeing that at the time. Sadly, the movie was made, you should have made it about 5 years later, and I might have kind of stuck my nose in and try and get involved as a historian, but I was too young and only just starting to write about it. But I was desperately keen to see it all when it happened. And there was Kenneth Griffith with his, very unique take on the whole Anglo-Zulu War, with the scenes coming alive, which he's got from Zulu Dawn.
It's interesting that the battle, when you say especially the two high angles there that are shown, in order to achieve, because there's only so many times you can let 5,000 people go, as it were. You know? So we had 6 cameras on the field of battle, and there's every possibility, of course, of catching a unit, as the high angle cameras pan. So I had the foresight to have some T-shirts printed to sell, red T-shirts with white detailing for the cross-banding of the regiment, the 24th. So I had the foresight to dress the camera crews in because we didn't have spare uniforms for them, but I put them into the T-shirts, so at a distance they looked as if you would not notice the camera. It could have been anybody, unscrewing ammunition boxes or preparing a limber or whatever it may have been, or field medics and the like. So you're not aware of them.
Aware of it? No, absolutely, and you're not. And I mean, I've seen it many, many times, and those are the kind of little details that interest me. And no, I haven't seen it. So there you go.
And then, of course, there comes the moment when Denham Elliott hands me the colours with the words, "Carry the colours to safety, Mr. Melville." And I ride off the field. Now, what I hadn't worked out, even with a stirrup cup, that a sail at that the flag at a gallop is a sail, and I was straight off the back of the horse. We had to defer that shot while costume ran me up some galloping colours made of a light silk, so that the sun could shine through them, and I could retain my seat on the saddle. Which I then promptly rode off to Fugitives Drift and rode the horse with the colours into the river, and first donned a wetsuit underneath the scarlet uniform. And that sequence I also had to direct, because the director was not available to us that day.
Looking back at the film now, all these years, and you've done some wonderful performances, over the year on TV and film. I would love to talk to you at length. I hope I might be able to, because your knowledge and recall is amazing.
Thank you.
How do you feel about the movie now? How you in the environment that we're in today and things like that, and people being very wishy-washy about things? I love it.
Well, there's a thing.
Yes. How do you feel about that?
Well, when we made it, we were aware that we were in a changing world, which is why we chose that subject. Yeah. The first defeat of imperial troops by native troops.
Right.
And indeed, it subsequently brought down Gladstone's government. That's why we have in the brief political scenes between Sir Bartle Frere, played by Sir John Mills, and Lord Chelmsford, because they dreamt up this campaign. They maneuvered Cetewayo by issuing an ultimatum with which he could not possibly comply. That still goes on today. One was issued last week. And it was Tehran could not comply, and therefore the mission began. Yes. Now, it's exactly the same tactic. Why did Chelmsford pursue the war? Why did he need a war? Well, he wanted to win a war and thus decorated, return to London and begin a career in politics. It was about his personal advancement that he maneuvered Cetewayo through Bartle Frere into precipitating the invasion with the BEF into Zulu land.
Ian, again, the same kind of question to you. In the environment we're in these days, how do you feel the film comes across these days in the environment we are in now today?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that all those elements that James identifies actually still make it quite a valid perspective today.
I think so.
It's interesting because the original Zulu movie as well, it has quite a challenging view of British imperialism. And then Zulu Dawn sort of takes it up and goes it looking at the background to it. And as you say, the manipulation, the way that King Cetewayo is cornered and forced into a conflict and all the rest of it. And that's very much actually how historians look at it now. And I think I'd put in a quick word as well about the way that the Zulu king is portrayed. Fantastic performance by Simon Mabunu Sabela playing King Cetewayo in it.
Wasn't he great as Cetewayo?
Absolutely fantastic. Really kind of majestic and brooding, but still quite sympathetic, And I think that's a crucial thing that today you can come to it as an audience and look at it, because although it doesn't develop the Zulu perspective as much as you might now if you were making a film about this, it's there and you can see it in the portrayal of King Cetewayo. Here's a man standing up for his country. He's not going to take any nonsense from the British coming in and making their demands. And I think, yes, it's right that attitudes have changed, but you're quite correct. They were on the cusp of change in 1978 when you were making the movie. And in a way, I suppose the movie was sort of ahead of its time because it's about where we sit now looking at that kind of history. Yeah. And the British are not the good guys in that story. And you must have been aware when you were making it that you're not portraying the British as the good guys.
Not at all. Listen, at the time there were questions in the House and we were condemned for being in South Africa. And, I was young enough, as were my partners, who were not British exactly, although Barry Sinclair was British originally, frankly could not give a fig for what the British Parliament had to say and the criticism being levelled at us. And they were particularly vocal when it came to the daily rate that was being offered to the Zulu extras. What they did not know was that we had consulted King Buthelezi with regard to how we spent our money with the extras. And we said, the budget is X, how would you like us to spend it? And he said, you will pay them the same, or just less than what a farm labourer is paid, because otherwise people will leave their farms and not have a job to go back to in 3 months' time. You will employ the unemployed, and you will feed them, and you will house them, and you will treat them well. Fantastic. It was entirely Buthelezi who laid down the strictures there, and he gave us liaison officers and a senior liaison officer called Sixpence, who rather wonderful man, who effected a cigarette holder.
Well, he's in the movies now.
Who was responsible for supplying the 5,000? And they had to recruit, you see, and they put dummies up with, wearing British uniform of the period. And it took some time to recruit because they were convinced they were going back to war with the British. But once we got over that hurdle, people turned up to work and had rather a good time, I think, on the whole. Yeah. But yes, we did fly in the face of reason and of criticism and ignored it. We wanted to do our movie our way and look after people without fear or favour. This was not made easy for us by the the South African regime at the period, as you might imagine. Connie Mulder was the Minister for Information of the period. His mistress, interestingly, made the documentary, the film of the film during the period, and I would find her quite often outside my bungalow at 7 in the morning, listening into my telephone conversations. Our switchboard was monitored, certainly. Within a few days of arriving in Zulu land, a detachment of police arrived, and they said, "You can't have so many Africans here without a policeman." And they built a charge hut and a jail, and Bob Hoskins undermined them rather wonderfully. He would entertain the chief of police every night in his rondavel, which he'd had to build for him, give him a very large spliff of Durban poison, and tell him how to run his country.
Fantastic, absolutely fantastic.
We were a rogue force out there.
You were,
and we had plenty of adventures.
Yeah. And I wish you could make some more wonderful movies like that. I'm in awe of what your capabilities are.
Well, I spent subsequently 4 years in the law courts, and I said, sod all this. I don't need this aggravation. I'm a working actor. Yeah. And I went back to it being just a gun for hire.
But do you feel now, if I can just, preempt and ask a question, what do you feel now about the fact that Zulu Dawn is getting this new release, this new lease of life, and people?
I'm staggered, Ian. I'm staggered. Yeah, I really am. I'm very, very surprised. I have long buried the film and those experiences in my past.
Interesting.
And then to begin to understand what was going on, I think maybe I'd spoken to Ozzy, or maybe it was I spoke to Rita Tushingham, because I was briefly on Boudica with her, to discover that Ozzy was working on a 4K version. I think I spoke to Ozzy, and he was delighted because it was the first time, in his opinion, that there was a print worthy of the work that he'd done at the period. And because the ownership had changed so much of the film, the quality of the prints became lesser and lesser, and would achieve without the focus of depth of field and colour that Ozzy had managed at the time. And he did a fantastic job of Samarawi.
It does absolutely look fabulous. As I say, this is the first time I've seen it on a big screen since it came out.
Well, it will be the first time, should I get to see it on a big screen, it will be the first time for me as well, because you might imagine that, with the endless legal actions that followed the making of the film, that one became tired of what, to me, was Zulu yawn.
Gentlemen, well, it's kind of burst back into life now. It looks fabulous.
Yeah, well, I'm delighted and surprised and amazed to be doing a number of interviews today. Here I am. I shall be 78 in July. And tomorrow I have a public reading of a brand new play, Mandinia, about Dr. John Dee, and I will play Sir Francis Walsingham, Elizabeth I's spy chief. Yeah. And my manager in Los Angeles is negotiating for a brand new film in which I will have the leading role in both.
Fantastic!
I'm amazed.
I don't know when I'll catch up with you, but if I do, I will be in awe. Thank you so much, Ian, and to James especially. Thank you so much for a wonderful interview. Thank you. Sum up in a nutshell, as they say. If you were going to see this film, why should you go see this film? What was your energy to produce it, and why should you go see this film?
This film is the last of the analog epic films, where you may experience human courage and misery in depth against a vast panoply.
And Ian, again, what do you feel, in a nutshell, the film delivers for you?
I think it's one of the last great old school epics, and it takes a fairly sharp look at a period of history that ought to be better known, and it gives you an incredibly dramatic rendition against a rich landscape of one of the great kind of colonial stuff-ups of the Victorian era. Which at the time was hugely shocking and deserves to be rather more remembered today, and which I would just add is still very much remembered by the Zulu people themselves. The Battle of Botswana,
and also by the Royal Regiment of Wales. And also by the Royal Regiment of Wales.
Yes, absolutely they are.
Which the 24th devolved into. And if I could just add one further thing, there were 4 scripts written of the period, the third of which was Zulu Night, which dealt with the Battle of Ulundi, where Cetshwayo was defeated. Cetshwayo was brought in chains to the court of Queen Victoria. And such is the ability of the British to forgive and celebrate its enemies that Cetshwayo became a favourite of Queen Victoria, and indeed there exist photographs of Cetshwayo at Ascot in top hat and morning suit.
Wow. Fantastic.
Isn't that extraordinary?
Absolutely amazing. Now, if those scripts are still out there somewhere, you need
They
to
are,
get on there.
and I know where to find them.
Oh, God, do, please. That would be fabulous.
Get those films made. Come on.
Well, there remains to be made Zulu Night, and the last story of the quartet is Fanny Colenso, where the Bishop of KwaZulu-Natal, Bishop Colenso's daughter Fanny, fell in love, and indeed there's a very brief scene at the garden party in Pietermaritzburg, dressed as a redcoat and followed Durnford to the battlefield. One of those great Victorian women who was able to step outside society, presumably because she grew up in KwaZulu-Natal, and is one of the very first flag bearers, in my opinion, for the emancipation of women.
Fantastic. Thank you for putting it together. Thank you to Ian and James for, again, a fantastic interview and revelation about Zulu Dawn.
My pleasure.
Absolutely pleasure.